It was an awful, terrible earnings report from the Walt Disney Company yesterday. It was unbelievably bad. You could count on one finger the number of good things that were said from the company in terms of what went well. And in terms of what went the opposite direction, well, it was everything else. Yet the mainstream media is unlikely to fully report that. And we're going to show you just how far into the area of falsification the legacy and access media is willing to go to try to protect this Walt Disney Company, this Robert Iger, the golden boy. And boy, has he messed up. Well, happy day to everybody out there. We have made it almost to the weekend. We've got another day left to go, but hey, it's time to get started celebrating unless you are everybody inside the Walt Disney Company where celebrations, well, that's just a town south of their resort, which is under serious siege in the state of Florida. The Sunshine State is none too happy with the Walt Disney Company. They are none too happy with them. But you know what? We're going to break it all down and show you how things are being flipped upside down when it comes to the coverage of this situation. Helping me do that, Valiant Renegade and Jonas J. Campbell, frequent guests, frequent stars of this channel, and also we were all together yesterday for the Renegade Online show where we covered the Disney earnings call live. Now, folks, as we get into this, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and you can stick it to the algorithms when you click it. We're talking about the notification bell. Let's start off with a report out of the Hollywood Reporter. This by Winston Cho. Bob Iger on Ron DeSantis' legal battle with Disney. Does Florida want us to invest more or not? And we're going to show you just how bad this is in terms of coverage. You will walk away from this a bit wiser, but perhaps disgusted and curious about every single other aspect of the news, considering this is just so wrong. The little subtitle here is, despite litigation with the GOP governor's administration, the company has plans to invest over $17 billion in its Florida theme park over the next 10 years. It's a theme park resort, not a theme park. Here we go. Disney CEO Bob Iger alluded to potentially withdrawing some investment in Florida amid an ongoing battle with Governor Ron DeSantis, who continues to retaliate against the company. Folks, we could stop right there in that sentence. There's plenty to dissect here that's already wrong, but let me finish the paragraph and then we'll go back to it. He said he's closely evaluating where it makes sense to direct future investments in Disney's theme park business. All right, issue number one. Yes, Disney could withdraw investment in Florida, and if they do, Universal Studios will eat their lunch more than they already are.
That's
Universal
it.
Studios and SeaWorld would love that. Second of all, Ron DeSantis is not retaliating against the company. I'm not political. I don't want this channel to be political, but we want to stick to the facts. The Reedy Creek Improvement District is that which has been dissolved, not anything related to the Walt Disney Company, except that, oh yeah, Iger is now claiming that the Walt Disney Company and the Reedy Creek Special District that governed Walt Disney World are one and the same. We could spend 30 minutes explaining all of that, but instead, we'll just go to the panel. Gentlemen, what in the world is going on with the Walt Disney World Resort, with CEO Iger, with Governor DeSantis? What's going on? Explain it really fast for us.
In 1967. It was 1967 on
Do it in song form,
no.
Jonas.
There was a great big beautiful. Okay. Okay. So basically, everybody knows the story of Epcot, the experimental prototype community of tomorrow that Walt was going to set up in Central Florida. After Walt died, they made something called Epcot, but it was not a community. He got all the authorizations to make a city, and instead, after he died, they just made a theme park, but they kept all the rights that they got from the state of Florida that were going to be used to make a city. And they've held on to them despite the special taxing district being set up specifically and only for the purpose of running a municipality. And they've also been posing as a municipality by maintaining a farce of citizenry that are all under the control of the Walt Disney Company. And now they've gotten politically active. And so there's been some political stoppage to say, hey, guys, what have you been doing here for the last 60 years?
Now, Valiant, the way the media is covering this, they're presenting it as if Florida is picking on Disney and Disney is the big kid on the block and that eventually they're going to knock the block off of the state of Florida. That seems to me to be very wrong, given what we know about the current situation and what's actually happening. Now, I do want to break some news, and in doing so, we're going to go into rumor and speculation territory. We're going to bring forth some information out of one of our highest level sources in and around the Walt Disney Company. Both I and Jonas have met with this individual. This is about as high as it gets, at least as high as we get. Yep. And what we've been told essentially is that, yes, the Walt Disney Company and the leadership within that company, various individuals, that they know that this is a big deal. They especially know that it's a big deal in terms of the bonds, the municipal bonds, huge sums of money that were put out there as if they were being put out by a government, a special district municipality government. However, now it seems that for decades, those were in actuality essentially coming from the corporation, and Robert Iger is saying essentially such in the meeting yesterday. Just Reedy Creek and Disney are one and the same now, which is bizarre that he's saying that. And folks, I apologize if this is in the weeds. We just don't have any choice anymore to cover this topic. It would take us 30 minutes, 45 minutes just to even explain some of this stuff. Go back and check some of the older videos if you want, but I also trust that you all have the high intellect to be able to hang with us, and we trust in that. Valiant, the media is spinning it that way. What I'm told, though, is that the executives at Disney and the high-level individuals in Disney, what they're counting on here is that Florida will not call Disney's bluff, that they will not pursue the bond issue. And the reason that I'm being told that they're, I guess, confident is the right word, that Disney is confident, at least portions of it, that that's not going to happen, is because they believe that it would be mutually destructive, that it would devastate the Florida economy, and that it would devastate the Walt Disney Company, but that because it would devastate both, that it's in both of their interests to not do so. Can you walk us through that situation before we read the rest of the article? Because it needs to be understood the level of stakes that are at play here before we go on to read these pieces by people who probably don't even know the first thing about what we're discussing.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is a complex issue, and I can tell for the folks watching out there that if you're not familiar with me or my channel or my experience in this matter, of course, legal mindset is great on the legal side, but I can also tell you from the financial side, I've been a Series 7 registered stockbroker for 20 years almost at this point, and one of the biggest issues on the testing for that certification is actually muni bonds. Look, there is no reason for Florida to go after the bonds. I frankly don't understand why Disney is concerned about that or even bringing that into the argument here, whether or not.
It seems like they're not. It seems they're confident that won't be brought up.
It shouldn't be. Well, it won't be brought up, but my point with that, Pro, is that there's no reason for it to be brought up. So let me walk the folks through there, or watching out there, with kind of the simple explanation, is that the former Reedy Creek Improvement District issued municipal bonds. Those are bonds issued by a state entity in the United States that get special tax treatment to the point to where, for example, if I buy a bond from the state of California, the state of Texas, the state of Florida, or something else like that, that falls under their municipal purview, then I am exempt by federal law and federal edict, constitutional edict. I am exempt from paying federal taxes on the interest that I receive. If I go out and I buy a CD from Bank of America or JP Morgan Chase, and I get 5% right now on an 11-month
certificate of
CD.
deposit.
Yep. I'm going to pay federal taxes on that 5% I get from a bank. If I get 5% interest from a muni, a municipal bond from Reedy Creek, state of Florida, Orlando taxing district, or a revenue bond in Osceola County, whatever the case may be, I don't have to pay federal taxes on that. So over the years...
Let's pause there. And the reason for that is because by buying the bond, you have already assisted the government, essentially, is the principle behind it, correct?
Well, effectively, there is a principle of the federal government in terms of judicial oversight, Supreme Court decisions over the years, And in terms of constitutional edict, the federal government is not going to tax state government, and state government's not going to turn around and tax federal government, vice versa. So in this case, the federal government is not going to tax the interest paid out by a state government, or in this case, a muni bond.
Okay, so let's break this down a little bit further, and then I'll let you run free on this. But so everybody understands, Disney being a private corporate, well, let me say that. Disney being a corporation, they could issue their own bonds.
Corporate bonds,
However, it's advantageous to issue government bonds, municipality bonds.
Yeah.
Even though Disney is not a municipality.
Correct.
Does that make sense? Okay, now let's continue on.
Yeah, and from that standpoint, the reason why, as Pro just brought up, the reason why the Walt Disney Company would want to issue bonds in order to develop the property around the Walt Disney World Resort. So, for example, quote unquote public roads, right? Roads and infrastructure that would allow the public to access from interstates and highways in the state of Florida into the Disney property to get to the parks. It would behoove them to issue those bonds to develop said property through a municipality versus a corporate structure. Why? Because typically a municipality is going to enjoy not only the tax-free status of interest, which attracts more investors, but they also get to pay those bonds back. They get to pay the principal back and liquidate that debt service at a lower interest rate than a corporate bond. So, for example, if you go out and you issue debt at a corporate level, let's say that you have to pay, LIBOR +2, which is the London Interbank Offer Rate, which is an international metric for bonds out there, and that might be 7%. But if you raise the same amount of debt through a municipal GOBO or a general obligation bond, you might be able to issue that debt at 4.5%. So what would you want to do? If you're the Walt Disney Company, I can issue $1 billion of debt and pay 7 to 8% service on that, or I can use a pseudo municipality, basically our own personal Vatican City in the middle of the state of Florida, and I can issue that same $1 billion debt service at close to half the cost. What do you want to do?
Well, obviously, we know the answer to that. We know which way Disney went with it.
Yep.
But my question now is, okay, so these bonds have been issued under dubious nature, let's say. Can you walk us through why the state of Florida, and again, we're talking about more than $1 billion at stake just on this, but the number goes way, way higher in just a moment.
Yep.
But can you walk us why the state of Florida then would not be interested in calling out the corruption that could be involved here?
Sure, because the state of Florida effectively, even though 1967's compact with the former Reedy Creek Improvement District, or RCID, has now been vacated and replaced with new laws, new legislation, where the other special taxing districts, the 2,000 or so that Iger mentioned during the phone call under sections 189 and 190 of Florida state statutes, where they operate. The reason why they don't want to mess with what came under 1967 from a bond standpoint is because effectively the state of Florida has sanctioned the issuance of these bonds.
Right,
so,
year after year of not calling this out.
Exactly. So if the state of Florida were to say that we are going to vacate these bonds, we're going to nullify the municipal status of these bonds, which I honestly don't know if that has any precedent, at least none that I can think of at this point. Andrew might be able to speak to that better, but I don't think there has been. But if the state of Florida were to vacate the municipal protection of those bonds, okay, that would obviously injure those bonds themselves, but the ramifications that would then spill over to the municipal bond ratings of the state of Florida would be bad. S&P, Moody's, Fitch, AM Best, all of these, those are the four big insurance and bond rating agencies out there. They would come in and they would slash the ratings and the forward-looking outlooks on the bond market for Florida, because of like, okay, we just had a state come in and just say that, well, these bonds they sanctioned all these years ago that were municipals, they just jettisoned them. They just shanked them. That should give us pause for other stuff. That means Florida could come in and start shanking other municipal bonds going forward. They don't want to do that. And that doesn't mean that the bonds necessarily, if they were to do that at the state of Florida, would mean they would default. They're not going to default, but removing that tax status would be massively bad. Florida doesn't want to do that.
Explain then. Okay, so when Governor Ron DeSantis said in an interview recently that they might look at calling the bonds, can you tell us what that means and what the implications would be there?
So the state of Florida could call the bonds in the sense that they would, if it's a pure call, right? And I'd have to go back and look at what DeSantis' comments were exactly in that case. But if you were to call the bonds, that means that you would effectively, you'd liquidate the bonds toot sweet, like overnight. Like the state of Florida, whatever principal was still owed on the bonds, let's say it's $1 billion, the state of Florida would then pay out the $1 billion to the bondholders to basically return their principal, cancel the bonds. Now, that's not uncommon. Many bonds out there were callable, especially, if you go back 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Why? A lot of bonds would leave a callable feature open because they would suspect, well, if interest rates go down, we want to be able to call the bonds, pay off our bondholders, and then refinance the debt with a new bond issuance at lower rates. Now, of course, we're at higher interest rate levels right now. I don't think that they're going to call, nobody would call a bond right now, realistically, I don't think, because we're in a higher interest rate environment than we were just last year. But there's a potential that the state of Florida could do that to basically satisfy the bonds, pay off the bondholders, make everybody whole, and then move on. I just don't see the likelihood of that happening. I think that's probably just some trolling again by Ron DeSantis, kind of like we're going to build a state prison next to Disney World. Yeah.
Now, Jonas, beyond the bonds, and for those of you who feel a little lost out there, hang with us. This is all really complicated simply because during the earnings call, Robert Iger equated the Walt Disney Company, at least in every way imaginable that I can see, he equated the Walt Disney Company with the special district, which is a government which existed and governed the area that is the Walt Disney or the Walt Disney Resort, that being about the size of Manhattan. Jonas, my question to you is, so we're talking about taxes, we're talking about all of these different new protocols that the company might have to go through, which, by the way, would be the same as every other company in the state. But when you begin to multiply that out, all of the incurred costs that Disney is now losing by getting out of this sweetheart deal that had been granted to them by Florida and everybody looked the other way for so long, Jonas, what kind of money are we talking about beyond just the bonds, which are like $1 billion and are messy? But what are we talking about in terms of just how big this is as an issue?
That was a really long question. I'm going to say we're talking the tens of billions at minimum. And over the next, because Disney is going to be around for a very long time, this could become $1 trillion issue for the company.
And they're not going to move Walt Disney World Resort. Is that correct, Jonas?
They have nowhere else to go.
I mean, it's such a stupid question. It's such a stupid question, but it has to be asked because people in the media are actually suggesting that Disney could just stop building. Disney could take their stuff and move somewhere else. These things are so stupid that you can't even fathom how they would come out of the minds of intelligent people. But
they've got two other options. Those are South America and Africa. Africa is not developed enough. China was a disaster, and the South Americans come up to Florida. That's just how that tourism industry works. They have nowhere else that they can put a theme park without going, oh, Universal, we're going to do what you're doing right now, and we're just going to set up shop next to you. It does not work. Yeah. There is nowhere they can go. They are not. Look at the environment that Bob Chapek was trying to get out of in California. They weren't going to shut down Disneyland. They were going to focus more on Florida. There is nowhere on this planet, and until they start putting people on Mars, There is nowhere else on this earth that they can put a theme park that is a good idea.
Well, not one that's 40 square miles, or to be totally exact, for those of you out there who are ready to nitpick, you heavy dosage pixie dusters, 37 point whatever square miles. There's nowhere to put something like that, and there's definitely no way to move it. All right, so with all of that said, let's go back to this article now so people can understand just how bad the coverage is. We certainly never expected to be in the position of defending our business interests in federal court, considering the relationship we've had with the state for 50 years, Iger added. Flaw number whatever this is. You won't be doing that in the federal court because the state countersued in the state courts, and the state courts have precedent over this. Therefore, it will go through the states first. So Iger is really on the ball. Escalating the standoff between Disney and DeSantis, the company in April sued the state, alleging the Republican governor's handpicked oversight board illegally voided an agreement that allegedly transferred certain powers, i.e. government powers, through a homeowners association covenant agreement.
This is so stupid.
Wow. Let me explain this to the THR. You can't transfer government powers, including the ability to build a nuclear power plant and an airport, through homeowners association covenants.
No.
Good Lord.
The precedent this would set if a court were to rule in that favor would literally say to states everywhere across the country, if a federal court ruled in this, is that a homeowners association anywhere in the United States could enter into a private agreement with a private company and turn over government powers to any private company. That means if the federal judge rules in favor of Disney, that means that tomorrow Walmart could enter into private HOA agreements and with every HOA out there, take powers away from every municipal government out there that Walmart has a presence in. I mean, this is how stupid this freaking legal argument is on Disney's part. This is just dumb.
And yet it is parroted on these articles as if it's real. And it'll be parroted on the clickbaiters, and it'll be parroted on the Disney blogs, etc. Folks, we're trying to tell you the truth. We're trying to explain entertainment, and we're trying to keep you ahead of the culture curve. Never did we think we'd be talking about this kind of stuff.
Pixie dust.
You know, who would have ever thought we'd be talking about $1 trillion issue here, or precedent-setting legal theories that the Walt Disney Company has attempted to try to save their fiefdom down in Florida? But here we are. It stressed that filing the suit was a last resort to stop the state from retaliating against it. No. God. For opposing the so-called, no, that's not the name of the law. That's the propaganda title for the law from the left. The propaganda title for the law from the right rhymes with broomers. Good grief. I mean,
all these
articles, just nonstop falsehoods.
All these articles always put the so-called, don't say. Instead of just saying House Bill 1557 Parental Rights and Education Bill. Like, you literally could just write that in there because that's the actual name of the bill, the actual bill number as cited and published by the Florida State House of Representatives, instead of just constantly putting this fake TikTok, Twitter BS name in there. We all know what you're doing. We all know what you're doing.
And then it says, which prohibits instruction on gender and sexuality through the 3rd grade. Also incorrect. It prohibits the teaching of orientation in any direction.
Yes.
Any direction. For children who are as young as 4 years old in official curriculum.
Yep.
All right. Let's skip down. We need to get down here to this next part. This is what is related to the earnings call. For those of you who missed it, just an awful earnings call for Disney. During the earnings call, Iger aimed to set the record straight. He claimed that Florida maintains special districts like Reedy Creek to encourage investment. Oh, well, what a shock to the system that is. There are 2,000 special districts in Florida to foster business and investment, he said, pointing to one maintained by Daytona International Speedway. It's easy to say Reedy Creek benefits us, but it's misleading not to say how it benefited the state of Florida. All right, special districts are actual governments which have boards that govern them, and those boards are elected by citizens. What the Walt Disney Company did was that they controlled who was allowed to live in that 37 square miles, and therefore the Walt Disney Company controlled by proxy everything to do with a special district which had powers unique to any other local government in the entire country, including the ability to build a nuclear power plant. Jonas, is the media missing this on purpose, or are they just this bad at it?
It's a little bit of both.
It is.
There's part of me that wants to. We know where the double wides are. There's part of me that wants to just drive up there and just knock on a door and say, "Hey, who are you? Can I move in? Can I register to vote within the district here?"
Well, you can't anymore because guess what? That power was taken away. There is no longer a Reedy Creek Improvement District, that being what was once over the entire Walt Disney World Resort, minus the places which were annexed because those had people living there, and Disney was not going to allow people living there the chance to vote in any of their stuff. All right, let's go to an article now which is even worse. And this is just, but we have to do this. We have to show people what's being said around the media and explain how this is working, how this propaganda system works. This out of the Hill by Philip Levine. DeSantis won the first round against Disney. He should have walked away. Again, we're not political. We don't care about politics on this channel. Left, right, doesn't matter. We're more about the philosophical foundations below that. But let's read this. When Elsa, the Disney princess from Frozen, sang her 2013 smash hit, Let It Go, she didn't know that she was offering excellent advice to the future governor of Florida. Oh, how cute is that?
Oh, is he not aware that Let It Go is a villain song?
Ooh,
Oh,
for a
God.
while, the Disney versus DeSantis feud appeared to be over. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis had made his point. He taught Disney a lesson about the cost of wading too deep into the culture wars. It was inevitable, of course, that Disney would push back, as it did last month, with a maneuver to regain control of a key development board. But this should have been little more than a 24-hour news story. If DeSantis had let it go, he would have walked away a winner. Instead, the governor turned his battle into Disney into a war, one that will cost him and the state in untold ways. I don't even
No.
What in the world is this talking about? The Walt Disney Company stands to lose $1 trillion. That is BP Gulf oil spill money. $1 billion in this. What does the state have to lose? They're not going to move the theme parks. They're not going to stop employing people.
Florida's not going to lose anything.
Just ridiculous, too. They dissolve the special district, and they have to replace it with something else. It cannot sit there, or we have a whole host of other issues. The bonds have to be kept in place for all the reasons we've already talked about. So Ron DeSantis could not walk away from this issue and not suffer more consequences. The entire premise of this article is based off ignorance.
Well, it goes on then for paragraph after paragraph to tell us the history of Disney, Walt Disney, buying this land. But then it goes on to suggest that DeSantis has overstepped the grounds. And I don't know what the damage is to the state of Florida. I can't find it anywhere in here. It says, ultimately, however, the real losers are the people of Florida. DeSantis' battle against the mouse has damaged that being this person is a Floridian, I guess, has damaged our reputation as a pro-business state, distracted from more important issues, and could come with steep economic costs. A year from now, if the fallout continues, we will all find ourselves wishing that DeSantis had taken Elsa's advice. And it's just hogwash. It's just ludicrous.
There was a line. Can you pull that back up just for 1 second? And again,
Absolutely.
I know we don't want to get into politics, but they buried the lead here, and this article in the Hill has exposed itself for what it is. And this is just, we're afraid of Ron DeSantis. We're afraid of him igniting, in their opinion, the silent majority once again. They know what DeSantis can do. Here's the thing. DeSantis is on the right side of this legal case. Whether you think he is or not, I don't care. But look at that line right there, leading many Republicans to wonder, how is this guy different than Trump? This is the ultimate. This is the crux of that Hill article right there. That's it.
Look at his byline. Look at his byline.
They are frankly terrified. And again, this isn't being political. This is my personal observation based on a media publication here. We know how media publications are in the public specter, and that is that they are very against one side and very supportive of the other. And if a media publication like The Hill views a man like Ron DeSantis as, quote, unquote, in their article, how is he any different than Trump? That tells you everything you need to know about their reporting on DeSantis.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is that the state of Florida, this is not a DeSantis, and I want to make this abundantly clear for everybody out there to recognize. Everybody has to get a firm grasp around this. This is not a Ron DeSantis crusade in the legal sense. I understand in the public relations sense that we can make that argument. But the fact of the matter is that every single action that has been taken against the former Reedy Creek Improvement District, a district that, quite frankly, has violated every spirit of the terms of service that the legislature granted it in 1967, right? Because they didn't want to build a city. Why is that? Because Disney's own legal counsel, way back in the day, in 1970 and 71 and 72 and 19, all that, what were they told? You know what? If we actually let real people in here, they might actually vote our power away, and we don't want to have that. That's why they didn't
let's build a mobile home park and put a few people in there that we like. And call
that's just it. That's just it. The Florida state legislature has been looking at Disney World and Reedy Creek for decades, but until recently, they never had the political willpower, the guts to actually go in there and fix the problem that the 1967 Florida legislature created. Now they've done it. Disney doesn't have a right to a special taxing district, as no company on earth has a right to a special taxing district. That's where we are at this point. The legislature did this. This was not a gubernatorial fiat. This was not an edict from the governor's desk in Florida that Disney can't have this or that. This was an overwhelming majority of voters in the state of Florida who put this into play. And their legislative representative, duly elected, by the way, I might add, that put this into play. This was overwhelmingly done by the legislature. The governor signed it. It has been done again and again and again with successive legislation beginning about this time last year. This is not just Ron DeSantis. This is the state of Florida. This is the electorate of Florida that has brought this down upon Disney. Do not be fooled by stupid, poorly written, poorly educated, poorly researched media articles trying to fool you that this is some, Ron DeSantis on a crusade. Every bit of legal evidence shows otherwise. Those are the facts, and they are undisputed.
Excellent points, all valiant. Now, gentlemen, the company suffered one of the worst follow-ups I've ever seen. We know that the last time we met with Iger, that it did not go well. There was call after call after call that pointed directly at culture war issues, which Disney does not want to deal with because they're on a very far end of one political and sociocultural position, which puts them in an unpleasant place for a family corporation, for a company that makes children's entertainment. But yesterday's follow-up was just as bad, in my opinion. They did not have a win across the board other than their theme parks internationally are doing all right. But Disney Plus subscriber numbers for North America, down. Mm-hmm. The box office, down. If you looked at so many things, all down. And Disney now forecasting into even the third quarter that it's not going to get better. Guys, how much is at stake with them playing chicken with the Walt Disney World Resort, considering it is the behemoth that brings in the big bucks year after year after year, and now they're playing chicken with $1 trillion if you look over the course of a century of it being there. Jonas, what is going on with this company, and do you think that there's any sense to the calculus that they're making?
The thing that I noticed in this earnings call, to answer your question, is that Bob Iger seemed pretty tired at the beginning of the call. Some might say disengaged, to the point where a lot of comments on the live stream were like, "What is going on here? What is he? Is he sleepy? Is he maybe medicated? What is going on here?" But then the questions about Reedy Creek came in, and he lit up. He might have spoken longer And he definitely spoke more passionately, but he might have spoken longer on Reedy Creek and the situation with Ron DeSantis than he did on his scripted portion at the beginning of the call. And every time we thought he was going to stop, he kept going with another paragraph, another dispute against Ron DeSantis specifically. He has lost his cool. Bob Iger has lost his cool. And a lot of the evidence that we've seen on this channel and on Valiant Renegade's channel and on the analysis on that Park Place is that Bob Iger has a legacy issue that he seems very personally invested in, and maybe to the point where it is causing him to lose perspective.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Valiant, is Disney too big to fail? And when will they begin to make a course correction if this continues?
Well, I mean, apparently, based on Bob Iger's responses on the call today, they certainly think, or he certainly thinks, that Disney's too big to fail. The arrogance and hubris that came out of that man's mouth today, that basically, I'll sum it up very simply. Dear Florida, you owe me. You owe us at Disney. That was Disney's attitude in that call today.
We made you.
We made you, you owe us. They don't seem to recognize, at least publicly, where they stand right now and where the competition is coming in from Universal Studios. Now,
they don't when they're thinking, when they're congratulating Mario, and Mario's about to wipe them off the floor when it comes to Orlando. As soon as Peach's Castle opens, that's the new castle to go see.
Yep, I was going to say, now privately, I think that's where Bob Iger's frustration comes in. He realizes, he knows, and I think a lot of people at Disney know, that they're about to have their lunch money stolen in the next decade. And there's not much they can do about it right now. They have decided to engage in this stupid frickin' fight with the state of Florida. One that they cannot, and I will say this again, they cannot possibly win. It doesn't matter. The state of Florida they can keep running circles around this Disney taxing district all they want, because that's what Florida can govern. It doesn't matter what Disney does. I don't know why they want to continue down this road, but they know what's going on, and they're angry. They're angry. Bob Iger is angry right now. He is not getting his way, and Bob Iger is not frickin' used to not getting his damn way. Bob Iger is so used to getting his way that he stuck around. He had a 5-year contract after he retired as CEO. And he's so used to getting his way that 5-year contract after he retired, he got to keep his own office in the Burbank C-suite. Bob Chapek couldn't even move in. Bob Chapek couldn't even get in the damn office. He had to get the down the hall office, the second biggest office.
That's right. Get the custodian's office, man.
And Bob Iger was so powerful and so used to getting his way, it only took Iger 11 months to get Chapek out after he left and reclaim the damn CEO chair.
That's right.
That's your Bob Iger. He is a spoiled, fricking Hollywood brat. And he's pissed off right now. That's the bottom line, folks. You want the Renegade rant? There you go. He's pissed off, and he's not getting his way, and he can't stand Ron DeSantis because Ron DeSantis is getting the better of him. And it's not just DeSantis, it's the legislature and the voters of Florida. Iger doesn't know what to do. He is lashing out at this point. This is anger. This is a petulant child that doesn't know what to do now that somebody else, the neighbor's kid, came back over and said, no, I want my Transformer back.
Transformers at Universal, by the way.
Yes, it is at Universal, by the way.
And
that's
my kids are blown away by that.
Yeah.
I'll also point out, if you want to see the disaster of the shareholders meeting, the annual shareholders meeting, go look at the Valiant Renegade channel and the Renegade online channel.
Renegade Online, yeah.
He's
about
getting
45 minutes to watch
as well.
Yeah. It'll take about 45 minutes watching that video for you to get a great idea of exactly how poorly it went. Of course, you can skip through it. It's the beauty of it not being live. But I think if you'll just go watch that video, it is abundantly clear. There is no good news. And Disney is on the defense in the meeting over and over and over. Jonas, final thoughts, and tell us where we can find you on this great, big, beautiful web out there.
Well, on the Bob Iger stuff, I've been saying this is not becoming anomalous. This is becoming Bob Iger's final character trait revealing itself. My goodness, he was charming for so long, master communicator, and for him to be losing it like this publicly, repeatedly, I fully expect him to blow up again at some point now. I will be surprised if it doesn't happen again at this point. And you can find me on my channel, Jonas J. Campbell, same name as me. And I like to do things where I examine the little corners of pop culture that maybe parents and people are not looking at, like everything woke about children's content, which Disney has a lot of that. And you can see a lot of that on my channel. My most recent video is everything woke about the Star Wars Celebration dress-up panel. I'm not going to use the word on your channel.
Yes, it was a cute dress-up panel.
Wait, let me get one of my wigs.
You're a regular Padme Amidala.
There you go. And Valiant, if the media doesn't start reporting these things accurately, it's all the better for us. But at the same time, it sure would be nice if they just finally admit what's really going on here. It's getting tiresome being right over and over and over, and them being wrong so often. It's not because we're geniuses. It's not because we can see into the future. It's just because we go to attorneys who have passed the bar in Florida, and they look at it and go, "Oh no, this won't work at all." Or we look at it and go, "No, you can't grant the power to build a nuclear power plant through an HOA covenant. That's a word I'm not going to even say on the channel. That's how dumb it is." Like, so Valiant, where can people find you and find all this truth that you're delivering, which once upon a time was just common sense and expert analysis?
Yeah, we put Hollywood through the business and financial lens of reality, and just like Pro does, the same thing. He's picking up that mantle too, which is why he and I are such great friends. Look, we need more of this. But if you're looking for me, you can find me at Valiant Renegade on YouTube and on Renegade Online on YouTube with all of our live show clips. If you missed the Disney earnings call today, it was 3 solid hours of holy Lord. Yeah, have fun with that. We'll have some clips coming up soon, but yeah, we're going to keep doing what we're doing. I'm also on Twitter as well. Stay tuned. We'll have more coming, I promise you. And of course, the Sunday live show as always, because I know Pro and I are going to have a lot to discuss this weekend as we digest all of this information. And I'm sure the next few days are going to provide some additional follow-up hilarity in the news.
You bet. So this afternoon, we've got the Pro Show live. Of course, it's every Thursday, 5 to 7 Eastern Time. Normally on Thursdays, we do a short morning video because we know people are going to be here for the afternoon, and well, that's 2 hours. But we had to cover this. The earnings report was awful. You've got Disney Plus down. You have linear broadcast down. You have parts of the parks down, although overall okay. You had many other things not going in the right direction, and over they were defending. Yet, at the same time, what we've talked about for the last 40 minutes will not get coverage almost anywhere else. And that's why we have to cover it, because it is the $1 trillion issue, which Disney does not want to discuss anywhere, and the media seems hesitant to even acknowledge. Well, that's why we're here, and that's what we'll keep doing. So folks, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe. You can stick it to the algorithms when you click it. And don't forget to drop a comment down below. We covet your comments. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, keep having fun.
Make sure to catch the Pro Show Thursdays 5 to 7 Eastern Time. Entertainment Explained, The Culture Curve Conquered, live with Pro and all his friends.